The day after burying my husband of 15 years, I discovered he had never really loved me. He only stayed because of money and his daughter. That sounds like the opening line of a terrible soap opera, but it's my life now. I'm sitting in the house we shared, the air still thick with the scent of funeral lilies and stale sympathy casseroles, and I feel like I've been hollowed out, not with grief, but with a white-hot rage that is starting to scare me. For context, I, 40, female, was married to Mark. He was 48 when he passed, for 15 years. We met when his daughter Chloe, now 19, was just 4 years old. Her mother wasn't in the picture, and I fell hard for this seemingly devoted single dad who was trying to build a stable life. We had a genuine partnership. We weren't flashy people. We had our routines, our inside jokes, our quiet, comfortable love. Or so I thought. He was the calm, steady one. I was the more emotional, spontaneous one. We balanced each other out. He told me I was the best thing that had ever happened to him. And Chloe. I believed him. I poured everything I had into our family. My time, my energy, and as it turns out, every last cent of my money. Mark passed away suddenly from a heart attack. It was brutal and unexpected. The grief was suffocating. Our home, usually a place of comfort, felt like a tomb. His family descended, of course. His parents, his brother Kevin, and Kevin's wife. They all hugged me, told me how much Mark had loved me, how I was a saint for raising Chloe as my own. Chloe herself was distant, as she always has been. She's never been openly hostile, but there was always a wall. She called me by my first name, never Mom, which was fine, but there was a coolness, a dismissiveness that I always chalked up to teenage angst and loyalty to her birth mother's memory. Mark always assured me she loved me in her own way. Another lie, I guess. The trouble started 3 days ago. I was in his home office trying to sort through the mountain of paperwork required when someone dies. Bank statements, insurance policies, and the deed to the house. It was overwhelming. Tucked away in the back of his filing cabinet, inside a dusty accordion folder labeled Miscellaneous Personal, I found a thick sealed manila envelope with my name written on it in his familiar neat script. My heart jumped a little, thinking it was a final love letter, something to comfort me. It wasn't a love letter. It was a 20-page handwritten document he titled My Last Will and Testament, the honest version. It wasn't a legal will. Our actual legally binding wills are with our lawyer, simple mirror wills that leave everything to the surviving spouse. This was something else. This was a confession, a manifesto of his resentment. I'm not going to transcribe the whole thing, because frankly, I don't think I could type it out without putting my fist through the monitor. But he laid it all out. He explained that he'd met me at a time when he was financially struggling. He saw that I had a good career, family money from my grandparents, and a kind if naive disposition. He wrote that he knew he needed to provide a stable home for Chloe, and marrying me was the most logical solution. He admitted he never felt the spark or deep connection that I so clearly felt for him. He just saw me as a means to an end. For 15 years he had been acting. Every I love you, every anniversary gift, every shared smile over dinner was a performance. He detailed the chore of having to feign interest in my life, my hobbies, my friends. He wrote about how he had to stomach my taste in movies and pretend to enjoy my cooking. He said he stayed because leaving would have been financially catastrophic and would have derailed his primary goal. Securing Chloe's future, the final pages were dedicated to that goal. He wrote about the college fund. About 5 years ago, Mark came to me with a brilliant financial plan. He told me that if we pooled our savings into a high-yield investment account under a single name, we could maximize the returns and avoid certain taxes. He said it made sense for it to be in my name since my credit was better, and I had the initial inheritance to seed the account. It sounded logical. He was always the numbers guy. I trusted him completely. Over the years, I funneled my bonuses, my savings, and the rest of my inheritance into that account. It grew to a substantial sum, well over $300,000. We always referred to it as Chloe's college fund. In his secret will, he laid it bare. He knew that if he died, the legally binding will gave me everything. So his letter was a moral directive. He instructed me to use the money in that account to pay for Chloe's entire undergraduate education at the prestigious and wildly expensive private university she just started. plus her graduate school, a down payment on a car, and a nest egg for her first apartment. He wrote that it was my duty to see his plan through. It was, he wrote, the price of the comfortable life he provided me. I felt the floor drop out from under me. The man I loved and mourned hadn't just died. He had never existed. I had been a caretaker, a bank, a convenient solution. My entire adult life, my marriage, my family, it was all a transaction that I didn't even know I was a part of. The grief I felt was instantly replaced by a cold, hard knot of betrayal in my stomach. The very next day, as if on cue, Chloe came to me. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't offer a word of comfort. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, fiddled with her phone, and then looked up, her expression impatient. She told me her first tuition payment was due soon, and she needed the login details for the college fund account so she could arrange the transfer. She said it with the casual entitlement of someone ordering a coffee. She mentioned that her dad had always promised her she would never have to worry about money for school, and that the fund was all set up for her. I just stared at her. The daughter of the man who used me, who was raised on the foundation of his lies, was now demanding her payout. And in that moment, something in me snapped. The hurt was still there, but it was being rapidly consumed by rage. The money in that account is legally mine. Every penny. His secret letter is just paper. It has no legal standing. It's the ramblings of a dead, manipulative man. I told her we'd discuss it later, that it was too soon to deal with finances. She rolled her eyes and huffed, telling me the deadline wouldn't wait just because I was being emotional. Later that evening, my brother-in-law Kevin called. He said Chloe had called him upset. He launched into a lecture about how Mark's #1 priority was always Chloe's future. He reminded me of my responsibility to honor Mark's wishes. He used the exact same phrase, honor his wishes. It was clear Mark had coached them all for years, framing me as the guardian of Chloe's financial future. They see me not as a grieving widow, but as a vault they need the key to. They have no idea about the letter. They all still see Mark as the perfect husband and father, and me as the lucky woman he chose. They think my hesitation is just grief, adult confusion, but it's not. It's a seismic shift in my understanding of my own life. Why should I fund the future of a girl who has never shown me an ounce of genuine affection? A future that was built on my back without my consent? Why should I honor the legacy of a man who saw me as a walking, talking investment portfolio? He didn't love me. He used me. He stole 15 years of my life, my love, and my trust. Part of me wants to drain that account, buy a one-way ticket to somewhere warm and sunny, and never look back. Another part of me wants to burn that letter and pretend I never found it, just to keep the peace and avoid the inevitable family war. But I can't. I can't unknow what I know. Every time I look at Chloe, I don't see a stepdaughter. I see the living embodiment of his deception. So, Reddit, am I the bad guy if I keep the money, if I refuse to pay for Chloe's education and instead use my own money, which he manipulated me into setting aside for myself? Do I honor the man who destroyed me and pay for his daughter's college? Or do I show them all what betrayal really costs? What should my next move be? Update 1. Well, my stepdaughter just logged in to check her college fund, and let's just say she won't like what she saw. Thank you to everyone who commented on my original post. The sheer volume of support was overwhelming. I read every single comment. And while there were a few who called me bitter or cruel, the vast majority of you said the same thing. It's your money, he played you, and you owe his legacy of lies nothing. It was the validation I desperately needed. Reading your comments felt like sharpening a sword I didn't even know I had. You all made me realize I wasn't grieving a husband. I was mourning a fictional character he had played for 15 years. And I was done paying for the production. After a couple of days of just sitting with my anger, letting it percolate, I made my decision. There would be no quiet suffering, no playing the victim. I wasn't going to be the gracious widow who honored her manipulative husband's wishes. I was going to be the woman who finally cashed out. The investment account was entirely in my name. It took me less than 10 minutes online to initiate a full transfer of the entire balance into my personal savings account, which is at a completely different bank. I watched the progress bar with a grim sense of satisfaction. When the confirmation email came through, your transfer of $342,781.54 is complete. I didn't feel guilt. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It was the first step toward reclaiming my life. But I knew I couldn't just ghost them. That wasn't enough. They needed to understand why. So I took a screenshot of the investment account page showing the beautiful, perfect balance, $0. Then I composed an email to Chloe. I kept it short and cold. The subject line was simply regarding your college fund. The body of the email read, per your request for an update on your tuition funds, please see the attached screenshot. Your father's lies cost me 15 years of my life, my trust, and my love. I will not allow his deception to cost me my financial future as well. He can't make me pay for yours from the grave. I suggest you look into student loans and financial aid. I wish you the best. I hit send. The silence that followed lasted for exactly 1 hour and 12 minutes. Then all hell broke loose. My phone started vibrating so hard it nearly fell off the table. A string of furious texts from Chloe filled with typos in all caps. She called me a monster, a thief, an evil stepmother straight out of a fairy tale. She accused me of stealing her future, of spitting on her father's grave. Then came the social media onslaught. She posted a long, tear-filled rant on Instagram and Facebook, complete with a lovely photo of her and Mark. She told the world that her wicked stepmother had waited until her father was dead to show her true colors, stealing the money he had saved his entire life for her education. She painted me as a gold-digging monster who was punishing an innocent, grieving daughter. Friends, distant relatives, and people I barely know started messaging me, calling me disgusting. Next, the phone calls from the in-laws started. Mark's mother was sobbing, asking how I could be so heartless. His brother Kevin was the worst. He left me a voicemail that was practically roaring, telling me I had no idea who I was messing with and that the family would not stand for this. He said they were all coming over for the memorial gathering we had planned at the house this weekend, and I'd better have a good explanation. He ended by threatening to expose me to everyone for the cruel, selfish person I truly was. Honestly, I almost laughed. Expose me? They want to talk about exposure. They have no idea what Mark left behind. They're all defending the memory of a saint, a perfect son, brother, and father. They're about to find out that their golden boy wasn't just a liar to me. He had opinions on all of them. I spent last night sitting in his office again, rereading his 20-page magnum opus of misery. He didn't just write about me, he wrote about everyone, and he was not kind. I have in my possession a detailed account of every single one of their perceived flaws and failures, written in his own hand. They want to expose me at his memorial. Fine, let them try. If they want to turn a memorial into a battlefield, maybe it's time I expose what their golden boy really thought about all of them. Update 2 turns out, my late husband's secret wasn't just about me. It had receipts on everyone. And this past weekend, I cashed them all in. The week leading up to the memorial gathering was a special kind of hell. My phone was a constant stream of abuse. I blocked Chloe and most of the in-laws, but the messages still came through from unknown numbers and mutual acquaintances who had been roped into their drama. Chloe's social media campaign was in full swing. I was the evil stepmother, the black widow, the monster who was dancing on her husband's grave. The narrative was set. I was a villain. I decided that if I was going to be cast as the villain, I might as well play the part. As I mentioned, Mark's honest will was a treasure trove of vitriol, and his family was not spared. He dedicated pages to his disappointment and resentment toward them. As I read through it again, a plan began to form. It was petty, it was vindictive, and it felt absolutely perfect. Here's a little taste of what the letter contained. On his brother Kevin, he described him as a functioning alcoholic who peaked in high school and a monumental failure who leached off their parents. He detailed a time Kevin had borrowed money from him for a business venture and lost it all, gambling, a secret Kevin had apparently never told his wife. On his sister-in-law, Kevin's wife, he wrote about his suspicion that she was stealing jewelry and small antiques from her own aging parents to sell online, calling her tacky and grasping. On his own parents, he called his mother a histrionic narcissist who made his childhood miserable, and his father an enabler with no spine. And the kicker, on his own daughter, Chloe. While he claimed his whole charade was for her, he didn't hold back. He wrote that he worried she was becoming lazy, spoiled, and completely lacking in ambition. He complained about her abysmal grades in high school and said he hoped the expense of university would at least teach her how to network with people more impressive than she is. He even wrote, and this line is burned into my brain, that he hoped she would one day develop a personality beyond her phone screen. So, 2 days before the memorial, I went to a print shop. I carefully scanned the most damning pages, the ones about Kevin, his wife, his parents, and of course, Chloe. I made 4 neat little packets, each containing the pages relevant to the recipient. I put them in plain brown envelopes with no return address and typed up labels. Then I mailed them, timing it, so they would likely arrive on the morning of the gathering. The memorial was supposed to be a small, intimate affair at our house, a chance for close family and friends to share memories. By the time people started arriving, the atmosphere was already thick with tension that had nothing to do with grief. Kevin and his wife weren't speaking. His parents were sitting on opposite ends of the living room, staring daggers at each other. Chloe was red-eyed and puffy, shooting me looks that could curdle milk. The letters had clearly arrived. It was Kevin who kicked things off. He stood up, cleared his throat, and started a eulogy that quickly devolved into a thinly veiled attack on me. He talked about loyalty, family, and honoring a man's final wishes. He kept talking about vultures and betrayal. As he spoke, his wife stood up abruptly and said she needed some air. She walked out, slamming the door. A few minutes later, Kevin's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face went pale, and he walked out after her. I could hear them screaming at each other in the front yard. The topic of conversation seemed to be a lost business investment. Then Mark's mother started weeping, but not about her son. She started accusing her husband of never standing up for her, which spiraled into a 30-year-old argument about something I couldn't follow. It was a complete and utter meltdown. In the midst of the chaos, I watched Chloe. She was sitting alone in a corner, just staring into space, looking utterly broken. The girl who had been so full of fire and righteous indignation just days before looked like a ghost. Her father hadn't just used me. He had eviscerated her in his private writings too. The one person she thought was on her side had seen her as a flawed project. The gathering disintegrated. People fled. The family imploded in real time right in my living room. They all suspected I was the one who sent the letters, of course, but they can't prove it. All I did was hold up a mirror to the man they thought they knew. He's the one who wrote the words. They think the worst is over. They think I've played my hand, but they still don't know what else I found in his files while I was digging for that letter. And trust me, it's going to burn bridges they can never rebuild. Update 3, I just hit send on an email that might ruin my stepdaughter's entire future. And I don't feel a single shred of guilt. Life has been quiet since the memorial service from hell. The angry calls and texts have stopped. The family is clearly too busy with their own civil war to focus on me. Kevin and his wife have apparently separated. His parents aren't speaking. It's a beautiful, silent symphony of destruction, all orchestrated by their sainted Mark. I've been using the peace and quiet to do some more digging. Mark was meticulous, a fantastic record keeper. It was one of the things I used to love about him. Now it's the gift that keeps on giving. While I was preparing documents for the accountant, I went through our old tax returns, and I found something interesting. For the past several years, Mark, who handled our joint filing, had been claiming significant gifts to Chloe that were supposedly separate from the main investment fund. He had also been writing off a series of business expenses from a consulting side gig I barely knew he had. Curiosity got the better of me. I cross-referenced his personal bank statements, which I now have full access to as the executor of his estate with the tax documents. The consulting gig was a sham. The business expenses were just him shuffling money around. He had been systematically underreporting his income and funneling that undeclared cash into a separate account for Chloe, an account that was used to pay for her SAT tutors, application fees, and other pre-college expenses. He was, in short, committing tax fraud. But here's the genius part. When Chloe applied for financial aid at her fancy private university, she had to declare her financial status. I found copies of her application forms in his files. On them, she, or rather he, as he clearly filled them out, claimed she had minimal family support beyond the official college fund I controlled. The undeclared cash gifts were nowhere to be seen. This omission made her eligible for a very generous need-based scholarship, a scholarship she was not, in fact, entitled to. So I spent an afternoon composing a very detailed, very anonymous email. I set up a throwaway email address and wrote to the university's financial aid office. I laid out the whole scheme, citing specific dates and amounts from the bank statements I had found. I attached scanned copies of the relevant documents as proof of the undeclared income and fraudulent claims. I suggested they might want to review the legitimacy of Chloe's scholarship, and perhaps her admission in general, given that it was secured under false pretenses. I signed off as a concerned observer. Then I clicked send. In the meantime, I've been indulging in some smaller, pettier acts of revenge. I sold Mark's prized collection of vintage watches. He loved those things more than anything or anyone. Apparently, I got a pretty penny for them, and promptly posted a picture on my now private social media of a travel brochure for a luxury trip to Italy with the caption, "Finally planning my dream vacation. So important to invest in yourself. New Beginnings Vacation Fund." I made sure a few of our remaining mutual friends would see it. I also received a formal-looking letter from the Alumni Association of his alma mater, asking for a donation in his memory. I sent them a check for $5,000 from the account formerly known as Chloe's College Fund, with a note asking them to list the donation publicly as being made in loving memory of Mark from his devoted wife. The hypocrisy is delicious. Yesterday, Chloe showed up at my door for the first time since the memorial. She looked awful. All her fire was gone, replaced by a desperate, hollow look. She told me the university had placed a hold on her account and was launching a formal review of her financial aid package. She begged me. She actually pleaded with me to fix it, to tell them it was a mistake, to give her the money so she could pay the tuition without the scholarship. I just looked at her. I told her that for years, she had watched her father treat me like an accessory, and she had followed his lead. I said she had every chance to build a relationship with me, to be family, but she chose to be his daughter and nothing more. I told her, "You should have treated me like family when you had the chance. Now you get to live with the consequences of his actions and yours." She left in tears. Now the family is threatening to sue me. Kevin, despite his own life being in shambles, left me one last sputtering voicemail talking about lawyers and contesting the will and suing me for Chloe's inheritance. What they don't realize, I've got one last card up my sleeve, something I found in Mark's safety deposit box, and it makes sure I'll win every time. Update 4: They wanted war. I gave them a funeral they'll never forget. The last month has been a blur of activity, but not the kind they were expecting. The threats of a lawsuit turned out to be nothing more than hot air. Kevin must have spoken to a lawyer who explained the very simple, very beautiful concept of legal ownership to him. Our official will was ironclad. As the surviving spouse, everything defaulted to me. The house, the cars, the bank accounts, and yes, the investment fund that was already in my name. His secret letter was legally meaningless, and they had no claim to a single dime. Their war was over before it even began. The final card I mentioned, it was a legally notarized document Mark had signed years ago, an addendum to our official will. It explicitly stated that in the event of his death, all assets, including any funds designated for Chloe's education, were to be under my sole and absolute discretion. He probably did it to give me control to manage the funds for her, thinking I'd be his loyal puppet forever. Instead, he handed me a legal shield that made me untouchable. Checkmate. So I stopped waiting for their next move and started making my own. First, I sold the house. I hired an agent, listed it aggressively, and accepted a cash offer within 2 weeks. I packed up 15 years of my life, but it felt less like leaving a home and more like escaping a crime scene. I kept a few sentimental things, photos of my own family, gifts from my friends, and sold or donated the rest. All of Mark's things, his clothes, his books, his silly golf trophies, gone. I've relocated to a city a few hundred miles away, a place by the ocean I've always wanted to live. I bought a small, beautiful condo with a view of the water. The air here is clean and the silence is peaceful. It's the sound of freedom. The news from my old life trickles in through a friend I still trust. Chloe was found guilty of violating the university's code of conduct. They revoked her scholarship and suspended her for a year. To be readmitted, she would have to pay the full tuition out of pocket. Without my money, that's an impossibility. I hear she's moved in with her grandparents and is working at a local coffee shop. I felt a brief, fleeting pang of something, not guilt, but maybe a sad acknowledgement of the wreckage. She is in some ways as much a victim of his manipulation as I was. But my sympathy doesn't extend to my wallet. She's young. She can get loans, work her way through a state school, and build a life for herself, just like millions of other kids do. Her free ride built on my back is over. Before I left, I did one last thing. I knew her 20th birthday was coming up. I found the original copy of Mark's honest will. I tore out a single page, the one where he dissected her personality. I put it in an envelope with a birthday card. Inside the card, I wrote nothing. I just highlighted one of his sentences, a particularly cruel one he wrote right after ranting about my gullibility. It read, "At the end of the day, my only hope is that Chloe doesn't end up as weak as her mother, but she'll certainly never be half the woman Anna is." I mailed it to her, a final parting gift from her father. Let her see that the man she idolized, the man she defended, saw her as a disappointment too. Let her know that in his twisted, hateful heart, he knew exactly who was stronger. My revenge is complete. I have my money, my freedom, and my future. They have the ruins of their family and the bitter truth of the man they thought they knew. I'm starting over, and for the first time in a long time, I feel like myself again. I'm not Mark's wife, not Chloe's stepmom. I'm just me, and I'm enough. So, Reddit, after all is said and done, was I the bad guy, or was I just the one who finally decided to burn the whole rotten house down after realizing it was built on a lie?